So I'm ready to start with the acrylic paint now. The acrylic ink has dried nicely. I've put everything into piles mainly to see what I've got, because I've got a fair few different marks already on some of my fabric. I've got the straight up sumi ink with nothing else. I've got sumi ink with the acrylic ink, and then I've just got some acrylic ink. So I just wanted to have a look at what pieces I've got, what will I be using for the acrylic paint, if any, and how to move forward from there. I know that my acrylic ink and my sumi ink pieces are quite busy already, so I probably won't be adding much acrylic paint to those unless there's an area that is noticeably like got a lot of area where there's no marks. I might think of adding some, but if it's too busy, I'm not going to add to the busyness. And also, even with just the acrylic ink itself, I like the mutedness of just having those beautiful acrylic ink marks. So I might just add a little bit of acrylic paint in some areas of the just the acrylic ink, and the same with the sumi ink, but I'm deliberating so I don't get too many marks in one space where it just becomes too busy, and I lose the impact then of having those really bold black sumi ink marks or those lovely areas of acrylic ink. What I've also done too is I'll just move these to the side. I've sorted out the rest of my fabric that I want to be using on acrylic with the acrylic paint, and then also my final step, which is the commercial dye. But I know also I want to keep some of the material totally free of any marks. So this is the pile that I'll still think about putting some acrylic paint on. It's a big pile, but then I've also got a pile of just plain fabric, because I want to use that in areas that I want contrast of marks versus no marks in some of my textile art pieces. So I'm making sure that I don't end up marking every piece of fabric, that I've got some without anything on it at all, and I'll put that aside as a reminder that I'm not going to mark any of these pieces up. So as I said, what I'll do now, I'll go through the pile and see if there's some that I think having some acrylic ink, some acrylic paint on will enhance the pieces, or whether they're already beautiful enough as they are or busy enough as they are. So I will just simply leave them as they are. I've chosen a few different colors to use with the acrylic paint. I mean, the obvious one is this beautiful lime green, which of course sits beautifully with the color theme. Then I've got, it's just an unbleached titanium in a nice, beautiful light beige colour, which adds a beautiful contrast to those darker greens. And I guess it looks a little surprising, but I'm going to use this Australian salmon gum. I love the pop of colour that it creates when I put it with the lima green colours. It might not be for everyone, but it's a colour that I really like working with. And of course, you will be choosing your colours depending on the colour of the fabric that you're using and really your personal preference. I'm using a whole heap of variety of paints, really anything that I can find in my paint box that is the same colour. Some of it's thicker, some of it's thinner, different brands. I'm after the colour, how the colour sits against the green. As long as I can get enough out of the tubes in the colours that I want. I'm not particularly concerned with brands. Of course, some brands, the colour pigments are a lot stronger than others, and you will get that beautiful colour effect that you're after, which is why I'm really partial to the Matisse, purely because I love the colours that they throw. But then again too, if I'm running low on something and I can't get to my art shop, I will go to my local fabric store, which has a lot of different varieties of acrylic paint, and I will use that as well. And that works just as well. As I said, sometimes there's a slight variation in colour, which for my textile art pieces, I'm not particularly fussed, you know, as to whether the colours are all matching up, because they're so intermingled with all of my other lovely marks as well. So I think the first thing I'm going to use would be probably the salmon gum here, this beautiful pink. And the process I might add is pretty much the same as the processes that I use for applying the acrylic ink or the Sumi ink. I'm looking for areas where I think the colour needs a little bit more popping, or there's a blank area that I'm going to experiment with a different shape. I've got a whole heap of different fabrics that have already got Sumi or acrylic ink on, or a combination of both. I'm looking for areas that might be enhanced with a bit of different colour. I'm looking for areas too that I can sit the pink alongside, but I'm also mindful too that I have got the two other colours that I want to use as well, which is that lime green and that unbleached titanium as well. So I'm selectively using particular areas, but I'm also, I'm just going to play as well, because bear in mind, if you really love a piece with the different types of marks or particular colours, you can make more of them. You know, this isn't a be-all and end-all phase. You can simply keep on marking up your fabric and continue to experiment with different colours. So I'm just going to use it straight to start with. And if this one's a flow, which is a lot thinner than the structure paint, and I'll see whether it needs any water added to it. But that's also going to depend on the fabric as well. Some fabric really receives the paint easily, others not so. For the brushes or the mark makers, I'm going to use just some cotton buds. This paint scrape, it's not actually a paint scraper. I used to use it with my pottery making many years ago. I love using this to just form some really thick curves, which is really nice. The bigger paintbrush, and then of course that thinner one that makes those lovely marks. So I might start with the cotton buds today. I want to add some pink to, might move him over a little bit, to this little guy here. Not all over the fabric, but just in particular places. I want to see how it sits amongst the green. So straight away you can see how that that green is reacting totally different now that I've got some pink sitting amongst it. It's a real pop of colour. So that's all I'm going to do there. So I've just got one area with the pink. I might add some of the titanium to it as well. I want to be mindful that I don't want to cover the entire piece of fabric with the pink. I'll just move him aside. I've got a spare space here that I want to add some of this. I call it pink, but it's actually salmon gum. Might just add it in there as well. This is the drop sheet canvas, so it really sticks onto the fabric, which I like because then it creates thick and thin gradients as well. So I'm going to leave that one. And I'm going to continue on all of my pieces, having a bit of an explore what happens if I add a particular colour into a particular area, and see how it sits alongside the marks that are already there. So I've marked up all of the fabric that already had some sumi ink or some acrylic ink on, and now I'm going to just pop them on the floor, and I'm going to lay out some of the fabric that has nothing on as yet and just add some acrylic paint to that. I'm keeping in mind too that the fabric that has just some acrylic paint on, it's a wonderful base for then dipping in some commercial dye over the top of that acrylic paint once it's dry. It's a beautiful resist technique with the acrylic paint, that once I've got that nice and dry and solid on the fabric, I can then use the commercial dye over the top of that, and of course the acrylic paint will stay solid and will keep those really beautiful thick marks. I love how the paint sits on different types of fabric, how the pink reacts to the colors of the fabric underneath it. There's such a beautiful, I guess there's this visual pull that I get when I see this really bold pink sitting on top of even the plain canvas drop sheet. I just love it, and I know once I start using it all and putting it all together, it creates this really beautiful story. I've got a whole heap on the floor. My table's pretty much full. I'll try and put some more on the floor, and I'm going to continue in exactly the same manner using, as I said, this unbleached titanium and then the lime green. I might use the titanium in different areas on the pink. Some of these areas in the middle of, say, these shapes might look good with some titanium, but I'm going to have to be mindful of letting the pink dry if I do want to use some more acrylic ink on the pieces themselves. Or else, as I said, I've got a whole heap of material still that has no coloured marks on it at all. I'll do a few in just the titanium and then a few in just the lime green. And by the end of it, I know that I will have a whole heap of marked material with this beautiful acrylic paint that really sits boldly, and it really throws its colour on top of the fabric pieces. So I've got a table full of really bold, vivid marks, lines, colours. I'm really loving the visual language that just putting some colours on top of inks, some colours on top of just uncoloured fabric, what type of language I can create with simple marks and lines. I'm really enjoying looking at them. I can see how it's all starting to sit against each other. The colours are now all of a sudden not standing alone, but sitting amongst other coloured areas as well. I'm having a look at this salmon and thinking, once it dries, will I have to mute it? It's quite a dark, bold colour. How will it stand against even fabric that hasn't been painted or hasn't been marked? That's a think I'll have once it all is all dried, and I've got it laid out against some of the fabric that I haven't put any marks on. I mean, you'll have this conversation with yourself with the different colours that you've used as well. How does it all sit together once I've got everything laid out? I've still got one step to finish, and that is doing the commercial dye dips on some of the areas that have already had marks on it, and also on some of the fabric that I haven't coloured at all yet. I want to see what other types of tones of colours I can get from using commercial dyes. I mean, I just use them simply as, I guess, a watercolour paint, and I've found that over the years I've been able to create really interesting effects with it as well. But that's in the next video. What I'll do now is I will leave all of these pieces and the pieces that I've got on the floor as well, because I've done quite a few. I'll leave them to dry completely. I know, as I said earlier, once I start putting the commercial fabric dyes over the top of the acrylic will stay nice and bold, and I can see what undertone colours I can get. But I'm really enjoying looking at them already, and I'm really excited to use them once I've pulled in a whole heap of other different fabrics as well, to see just that beautiful visual language I can create on some more new textile pieces. So until next video, I'm going to let these dry, and I hope you enjoyed not only watching the video, but I'm hoping that you're enjoying playing around with your paints as well and seeing what different types of marks and tones of colors you can do on your own fabric.